And welcome to another episode of Fresh Brewed Politics. Hopefully you all can hear me, can see me. I am on a weird ban on Facebook, but I don't know how our software works because other people are able to post still on Brewed. Other admins, we have other admins on Brewed, but I am in Facebook jail. We're going to talk about that, which will tie into our topic about Joe Biden getting denied, possibly getting denied communion as far as that goes. And we'll also be going into just a couple litany of things. But first, guys, please do me a favor and hit that share button for us. Go ahead and hit that share button and get us out there. Spread the word. Spread the word we exist. As we know, social media apparently, well, Facebook specifically, doesn't like me very much right now. Pretty sure it's got to do with the GE thing, which we'll talk about here in a second. But you never know. You never know. So please, guys, join us. Jump on. Hit the share button. If you're catching this as a replay, you can always listen to it in podcast form on all your favorite streaming places, the Apples and the Spotifys, and then it's Fresh Brewed Politics as well. Thank you guys for joining us once again. And if you're watching on YouTube, just tell some people about us as well. Now, I will take this moment to say, so it is true. I have been put in Facebook jail. The offending comment in question for you guys. So what had happened? What had happened was, so a person that I am friends with on my personal page, whatever that means. I mean, I know the guy. I wouldn't say we're friends. He'd posted a meme of Joe Biden, and it was in reference to Joe Biden talking about the communion issue. So right now, the Catholic Church is debating on whether or not to deny Biden communion. Oh my gosh, I forgot real quick, guys. Please go to brewedco.com, 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 and buy some coffee from us, please. Thank you. Okay. Anyways, gets delivered right to your door. Anyway, sorry. So from time to time, the Catholic Church does deny typically Democrats, communion. Why is that? Well, it's normally over their abortion viewpoints. Frankly put, it's against the Christian religion. Abortion is perceived to be against the Christian religion. Therefore, for that reason, if you are a politician who is a known proponent of abortion, a lot of times the Catholic Church will deny you communion. In fact, I don't even think this is the first time Biden's been denied communion. I believe at other places, several times, I believe, more than just this one time. But in this case here, that's what they were talking about doing. And we can kind of get into that. But this person posted a meme of Joe Biden, and it said a joke that said, "Oh, you're going to deny me communion? How about I take away your non-profit status?" And then there's a litany of comments of people who believe in using government force to tamp down your enemies, the same types of people that celebrate when Facebook goes ahead and decides to remove or put a ban on somebody like us because they just simply don't like our opinion, and they would rather than battle out in the arena of open ideas, they would rather instead go ahead forward and they'd rather go ahead and just take us all down, right? They'd rather we just go ahead and be silenced. In fact, you saw that with Biden here, setting up the domestic terrorism tip lines, which we'll get to here in a second. So what did I say? Well, word for word, what I said in this comment was somebody was saying that they should take away their nonprofit status, church's nonprofit status, especially the right ones, the ones to the right, for if they get involved in politics. Now, first off, I don't quite understand where it is in the Bible that says if you're a Christian, you're not allowed to be in politics. Yes, it says what is Caesar's be Caesar's, but that doesn't mean you can't be involved in politics. In fact, the definition of politics is the act of governance over an area. So, under that same idea of saying a church isn't allowed to be involved in politics, it's like saying that they can't vote, they can't voice their opinions on issues, especially when it comes to things like abortion that they have opinions on. But the specific comment I said was Staying out of politics is not a requirement of nonprofit status, though. There are tons of political nonprofits. Shoot, even political parties and candidates don't pay taxes on their donations either. That's the ban that got me sent straight to jail. Right there. Apparently, you can say all kinds of things, disparaging things about Christians. You can say terrible, mean things. I mean, just recently, because somebody had talked about it, and I wandered on. I guess it was going around on TikTok where there's this Facebook page started called Christians Against the Loki show or Loki something. I don't know. I don't have Disney Plus because, well, I tried not to support Disney as much as I possibly can, which is very difficult in this day and age. But I guess on Disney Plus there's some Loki show. Anyways, so the call was for for Christians to boycott this show, I guess. But what was weird is the page was set up as a joke by somebody who was joking, and then it attracted other trolls who are also joking. And so they set up this page, and it's just a bunch of trolls talking to trolls about trolly stuff. And that's like the whole entire thing. And it ends up being, and I don't know, you can check out the page if you want to, but it ends up being just a bunch of trolls trolling trolls who think they're trolling trolls who don't really exist. There's nobody, like, as far as I can tell, 0 people in the group that are actually Christians that think Loki should be boycotted. But yet this page, because they believe, when it wasn't even started by a Christian, the person started it as a joke that is not a Christian, but to make fun of Christians. But they believe for some reason, somehow, they're going to be offending somebody. So they post, of course, the most offensive things in the world. And I'm not saying they should be silenced per se. They have their rights to their viewpoints, right? Who am I to say one viewpoint is correct or not to the degree of saying that it should be silenced? I do not pretend to be so knowledgeable as to believe certain viewpoints somehow can't, quote unquote, exist. But, that being stated, I definitely disagreed with theirs. And they had, terrible things, terrible graphics, terrible things they're saying about Christians and Christianity and making fun of Jesus and the Bible and the religion and everything. And that's okay. It's a group. It's got 10,000 people in it. They don't have any, warnings on their page like Brood does. If you go to share one of their posts, you don't get a, are you sure you want to share this? Alert that you do if you go and you find one of our GE posts on Facebook and you go to share it, Facebook gives you a warning saying, are you sure you want to share this one? But we say one thing here. I said one thing about churches not getting their nonprofit status taken away because, simply put, they have viewpoints you disagree with, and I get a 24-hour ban for it. But let's go into that. I mean, let's go into that process that's saying churches can't be political. Listen, this is what I've discovered, and I know you guys agree with me there, that the left does quite a bit. And that is whenever somebody has a viewpoint that they disagree with, they attempt a couple different things. Now, of course, they're not going to do what we have no problem doing. We have no problem debating on the actual topic itself and the facts of the matter. No, we have no problem doing that. But they, on the other hand, like to sit down and say, okay, well, let's have a conversation about how you're wrong and you're a bigot and you're racist. So first I'm going to call you bigot and racist and a terrible person for even daring to have a viewpoint different than theirs. Then they're going to do this thing where they start to say you shouldn't even have a viewpoint at all. Saying that, well, for a church to have a viewpoint on politics is ridiculous. Well, let me ask you something. Should the church not have a viewpoint when they come for it? I mean, we literally have a religious organization up in Philadelphia that is just coming out of the Supreme Court that was fighting for their right to their political freedoms when it comes to adoption and foster and everything else. I mean, we all know about the Hobby Lobby case where they had to go to court to fight for their religious freedoms. So not political freedom, sorry, religious freedoms, right? Is it not? It's the same thing with Brood. How do you expect us to sit by and say nothing when the politics keeps coming for us? That's the problem. That's the issue. If politics would stop coming for us, and that is where the true and correct response for all this is to shrink the size of our government. We can all get along as long as we are not trying to control each other's lives. You can have whatever viewpoint you want. I can have whatever viewpoint I want, as long as we're not affecting each other's lives, forcing our viewpoints on to others. And so in this case, that's kind of what we're running into, is that they're saying, hey, you can't even have an opinion. We're going to come for you. We're going to take away your rights. We're going to take away your ability to operate as you see fit. We're going to grow the size of government. We're going to destroy your livelihood. And if you say anything about it, we're going to tell you shouldn't even be involved in politics. Of course, we know that's what they're doing. And it sucks because that in the grand scheme of things, what that means is that not only does it silence things, but when there's an actual racist or an actual bigot, it loses its weight. When you have somebody who's being actually racist, right? You have somebody who's literally riding around on a horse with a white hood. It becomes actually racist. And that's the problem, is that, it makes it, if everybody's racist, there's no varying degrees of racism. There's no varying degrees of racism. You're either racist or you're not. And that's the problem, is that if you just go around calling everybody racist, it loses its value. At least that is my humblest of opinions on that matter. So anyway, we got a Facebook ban for that. And of course, Joe Biden's getting talked about removing his communion. And you know what? He probably should get his communion taken away. So he supports the wrong things, right? He supports abortion, which he's fine to do, but you can't be in a religion that disagrees with it. So kind of moving on here, we're going to talk about the COVID thing. I just lost all my distribution on Facebook because I uttered the word COVID, but that's okay. So there's this article that was in The Guardian, that was called The Tale of Two Countries, right? And it's talking about how the U.S. COVID Delta variant is going to destroy everybody who's not vaccinated. Basically, they're pointing out that everybody is not vaccinated, right? Not everybody, sorry. That a large percentage of people aren't vaccinated, like almost half the country is not vaccinated fully. And this Delta variant is growing, and it is of concern. It's of a lot of concern. And so as the Delta variant is growing, they're saying, hey, well, at least they say it's of concern, sorry. So as that Delta variant grows, they're saying, well, all you guys who aren't vaccinated are in big trouble, big trouble. It's going to create two nations. One nation that can't do anything because they're not vaccinated, and another nation that's vaccinated that's living their lives, and it's going to cause a split. First, there's been two nations for a long time, and I can tell you how you know there's two nations. When MasterCard started saying, hey, I'm going to not allow you to transact things I disagree with. For an example, most recently, this Kyle Rittenhouse situation where MasterCard didn't allow anybody to donate using their cards to his defense fund. That's right. MasterCard started picking and choosing what its customers is allowed to spend their money on. They said, we won't facilitate it. And so, when you start running into that and you start saying, well, that's okay for people to do, or it's okay to remove a sitting president completely off Facebook because of some abstract guidelines we've came up with that is not even consistent at all, that we're just making it up as we go, which is absolutely true. But regardless, when they start doing it, it's creating two nations. And now you're saying, well, the vaccination's going to do it. Well, I don't think that's 100% true. We have a lot of fans, a lot of followers who actually are vaccinated. They just believe individuals have the freedom to choose what they want to do or not to do. And I agree with that. People do have the freedom to choose what they want to do or not to do. And that's what we're all about, right? People free of coercion from government or industry, having the free choice to do what they want to do. And so in that same way, that's just what we believe. And then you got another half that thinks, hey, we can take control of your life. We want to destroy it. We want to take it over. We want to do a whole lot of things. But this article here, they're talking about how, well, these people that are vaccinated are going to have completely different lives. Now, let me ask you this. Do those people that are vaccinated, right, are not vaccinated, sorry. If they want to be vaccinated, they can get vaccinated like that. So how will they have two different Americas? Well, there's only one way, and this is what they don't acknowledge in the article. The only way for there to be two Americas created is if the vaccinated decide to tell the unvaccinated they're not allowed to live their lives freely. See, they want to blame it on the vaccinated for not doing the thing they're telling them they have to do, when in actuality, the unvaccinated are just doing what they do in life, and then the vaccinated are responding to it. And this article misses that completely. I was thinking about this today on my way in. It harks all the way back to seatbelt laws, which, as a whole, of course, no politician is going to make their stand on seatbelt laws and say, getting seatbelt laws is the top of my priority and everything else, because, relatively speaking, overall, the penalties for it isn't that great or anything else. But I was thinking about it because it harkers back to this idea that the government can mandate you do something that they believe is in your best interest, that affects nobody else, but you just have to do it. Because, and the argument will be, well, it doesn't affect anybody else. I mean, you can, if you get into an accident, you clog up the hospitals and then Medicare, Medicaid, and accidents and stuff. And, they'll come up with some strange, convoluted way to make sure that your action somehow affects everyone around you. But at the end of the day, who does it affect if you don't wear a seatbelt? It affects you. But of course, that thought process is the same thought process that led to, for an example, the ACA Act, which the problem with the Affordable Care Act I had, personally, was not even anything else other than the mandate. How can the government mandate you buy something? But that's the same thought process. They said, well, it's for your greater good. It's for your help. It's for your greater good. Therefore, you should buy something. I should force you to buy something. And that's the thought process here. And now what they're going to do is they're going to turn into something else. They're going to say, well, Delta variant's running rapid, and we think that the hospitals are super full. And if you remember from our ABC hearing, the epidemiologist for the state was asked, what was the hospital capacity in our region when indoor dining was closed here in Kentucky? And what she responded with was around 70%. And you guys want to know what our hospital capacity was that day that we were sitting there with the mask mandates lifted or about to be lifted and announced and everything else? You know what it was? 70%. It was the same as it was when they banned indoor dining. However, they can come up with their reasons however they want to. And in this case, what they're setting up for is that if there is a rise in the Delta variant in the fall, whether it be manufactured or true, regardless, it will end up being an excuse for them to crack down harder on the unvaccinated and say it's only for your protection. As Benjamin Franklin said, those who give up liberty for a little bit of security deserve neither. Speaking of liberty for security, Joe Biden's setting up tip lines for you to be able to call in and report people that are becoming radicalized. And that is really scary. Or you believe are on their way to becoming radicalized. And that's really scary because we hear politicians say things all the time. I was listening to a podcast the other day from here in Kentucky, a Democrat podcast, actually. I listen to what they have to say. And there was a state representative, Democrat, on there. And they asked, how hard is it to walk into, he was black, how hard is it to walk into that house every day with all those Republicans knowing they're racist? And he didn't respond by saying, they're not all racist. No, he responded by saying, well, it's something we got to push through and we work hard on, and we're going to get it done regardless. And even though they're racist, I'm going to work with them. He doesn't sit there and say that, well, no, 75 House rep members aren't racist. He sat there and said every single member of the Republican Party of Kentucky that is in the House is racist. And that's the thought processes that lead us to be worried about this idea. If you believe that 75% of the Kentucky's House of Representatives is radicalized, as if you read a lot of these op-eds in these newspapers and everything else here in Kentucky, they believe, then you're going to believe they deserve to be turned in. That's the way it sounds. See, they say domestic terrorism is the greatest threat, not foreign terrorism, like, Al-Qaeda or Hamas or something like that, but domestic terrorism, and we're going to attack it the same way. Well, we went to war with other countries. We drone strike over that. Are you saying you believe in responding the same way? Seems pretty crazy. Seems pretty crazy to me. But, that's just the way they're running it. Apparently tip lines for you to turn in your neighbors for daring to vote for a Republican. And remember that too. I mean, what's called spade a spade. They pull no punches when they say this. The main talking heads on the left side of things believe that if you hit R when you're in the voting box, you are radicalized. And you're violent, and you're a racist, and you're a bigot. They believe that. And there's a small percentage that believe that as well. You don't have to spend very long on our Facebook page or our social medias to discover there's a lot of people, by a lot I mean a couple. One has like 20 fake accounts. But there's a number of people who believe in the core of their soul that if somebody disagrees with them, they're a terrible, no good person. And listen, I think there's some people on the left that are not very good people. I think there's some people on the left that are truly, truly disgusting. And they're disgusting because they know exactly what they're doing. But also, I think there's a lot of voters on the left that are just uneducated. Their heart's in the right place. They're just uneducated. And what do I mean by that? Well, they want to help the poor. That's a noble cause. I do too. However, in their attempt to help the poor, they grow the size of government, they ineffectively do it, and then in turn, they're unable to build or create a system and process that's able to respond to each individual person's individual needs, because a central planner cannot do that. Central planning, as Hayek said, is the problem. You cannot do it with a central planner. And so they have noble causes. They believe that they're helping people. They're helping the poor, the needy, the hungry, or whatever you call it, and homeless. And they do. We should help them as a community. We just don't believe the government should do it because the government sucks at it. And while the government's doing that, they're also spending your money running lizards on treadmills because they believe that's also important. So I don't think people on the left are terrible people. I think they hate us. I think they hate all of our values. They've been taught to hate us by their talking heads, by their leaders. They're taught that we're bad people, when in actuality, all we want to be is left alone. And we want them to be left alone too. We want them to be free to have their beliefs and their systems. In fact, I don't believe it. But I'm willing to let you believe the entire system, capitalism and everything, all of it, the entire system has been built on racism, which is what CRT believes, that the entire system is built on racism. It needs to be tore down and rebuilt. Capitalism's bad. I'm even letting you believe that. I'm okay with that if you can come to the conclusion that's logical after you say that, which is if the system is corrupt and terrible, we shouldn't give more power to the system. We should give it less power. I'm willing to even allow you to think. Flawful thinking? I don't know. That we're built and we're a racist country to the core, if it means that you are on board with shrinking the size of government because it's racist in your opinion. I'm okay with that because we come to the same conclusion, shrink the size of government. It's the people that want to grow government, that want to control more of your lives, that think you don't have free disposition. I mean, that's the same thing that when we talk about equality and equity. There's a big difference. Equality is equal opportunities. Equity is equal outcomes, but there's a problem. Charlie Kirk said this once. I don't know if he heard it somewhere, but I'll give props to him when he said it. He said the problem is equality is giving everybody $100. And then when and then telling them to come back the next day. And the next day, there's going to be some people who saved that $100 and they have $100. There's going to be some people that went out and maybe they somehow invested that $100. They bought something, then they resold it, and now they have $150. There's going to be some people who bought everything that they could and have nothing left. And people are going to all choose different things to do with their $100. But equity says that after that day, after you've given them that $100, they need to come back all with the same amount of money. And if they don't, that's a problem. That's racism. That's an issue with the system. That's not the issue. The issue isn't the system, isn't the process. People have their own free choices, and we can't take that away from them. And so as they're talking about these two countries and creating of two different lives, or whatever you want to call it, what they're really talking about is the people that believe, hey, I just want to be left alone. I think people should be free to make their own decisions. And a group of people that want to take everything from you. And I'm not saying that as a hyperbole. They literally want to take everything from you. I'll give you a perfect example. Elizabeth Warren is back tweeting about her wealth tax. Now, for those of you who are unaware, she proposed a wealth tax of 2% on anybody who made $50 million or more. There's a problem here. And for those who own a business, know what the issue is. In order for you as an individual to be worth $50 million, there's a lot of whatever here, so don't whatever. But we're just going to make round numbers, easy calculations. So in order for you to have a net worth of $50 million, you need a company that does $20 million gross a year in business. So you say, well, $20 million a year gross in business, you should be able to pay a 2% wealth tax, which on $50 million would be, 2% of that would be $1 million. There's only a problem. It is very reasonable for you to make $20 million and then have only a profit of $1 to $2 million after you're done. So you say, well, you got $1 to $2 million. Let's say you've got $2 million. You're like, well, you're happy. Well, no, hold on. Because remember, I have to pay the wealth tax. See, that's $2 million in profit. If I want to make investments into my company, I'd leave that money in there. However, I have to pay my wealth tax of $1 million. So I have to pull out $1 million. Well, hold on. That's now income that you get personally taxed on. So actually, I got to pull out around $150 million or $150,000. Sorry, $1.5 million to pay my wealth tax. And now you've taken somebody who's been paying, who had $2 million in profit on their business that they would have reinvested into growing their business, growing jobs, growing the economy, and you've cut them down to only having $500,000. And that is before they've even paid themselves a salary. It's a lot of work to reach a company of that size. That is if they're doing 10% profit. It is very easy for a company that is worth $50 million to be making $20 million a year to only have a 5% profit. Well, guys, that means that in your 2% wealth tax would take up every dollar in profit that business makes to own that business. That's a problem. The other issue with the wealth tax is that it doesn't account for dividends. For an example, one of the things Amazon is known for is it doesn't pay out dividends. Some places do, some places don't. But if your wealth is in stock you've bought and owned, okay? So I own, let's say, $50 million in stock. So I've got to pay my 2% wealth tax, that's $2 million. Well, if I'm not getting paid out dividends of at least $2 million a year on holding those stocks, it now costs me money to hold those stocks. I'm not going to buy stocks anymore. I'm going to sell them. I'm going to get rid of them. The stock market becomes an unusable thing. And you think, well, shoot, that's okay. Screw those bankers. Screw those hedge funds. Let's not forget that government pensions, your 401ks, your Roth IRAs are all invested into that same stock market as well. And a 2% wealth tax would effectively make that marketplace unusable. Let's say, well, Andrew, I've got mine in land. Oh, that's great. So now you're pulling another 2% property tax from people that own land. And keep in mind, you don't have that money in your pocket. And this goes into the people who think a wealth tax is a good idea are, once again, the same people on the left. They're just not intelligent people necessarily. They're just not intelligent. Because they think to themselves that when I say I have a net worth of $1 million, they think that means when you go to my bank account, it says 1,000,000.00, and that's not the case. You don't realize that money until you sell what is worth that $1 million. It could be land, it could be your house, it could be a business, it could be a lot of things. But that is the ignorance that comes from a lot of people on the left. When I say they're just not very intelligent, that's what I mean. As an example, is the wealth tax. Well, guys, that's what I got time for you guys today. Thank you so much for joining me. Once again, please hit that share button. Share us out there. If you're listening again, you can listen to this in podcast form, Fresh Brewed Fresh Brewed Politics. Go on brewedco.com, BREWEDCO.com. I thank you guys so much for joining us.